very young. I was, I think, 11 years old or something like that, and I guess it's called illegal child labor, but I was working at a horse stable shoveling stalls and things like that, and I'd save up a few bucks.
It's called initiative.
Initiative, yeah. I guess so, yeah.
Hey everybody, it's Rob Keenes of Gold Silver Pros. We are out here at the second day of the Silver Symposium in Coeur, Idaho. I have Michael Konnert from Vizsla Resources here. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Well, good for joining us. Thanks for joining us. And one of the things I always like to ask people at the beginning of these interviews is, how do you feel about the conference? How's it going? Because it's probably for most of us our first one in a while. How is it versus doing like the Zoom thing that we've been doing for the last 8 years?
Well, I certainly enjoyed a lot more than the Zoom. I think everybody's got that Zoom fatigue, so it's good to be in person, good to see people in person, and nice to know that the world's kind of getting back to normal in some ways.
Sure. A lot of investors here, some people from my home state of Texas have driven up. Of course, we have people from all over North America. But what I'm noticing is some younger people coming. I've got a couple of people in their 20s who are interested in gold, silver, and the mining stocks, which is interesting. I don't know, I've seen that in a few years. What are your impressions of the people that are interested in your company and that you're seeing at the conference?
Well, yeah, I definitely see that, and we do have a pretty large portion of, I would say, millennial investors, that follow Vizsla. And of course, I'm a millennial silver CEO, so I have my, my own network and people that I know, of course, that follow the space. So I think it's great to see that. What I think will take it to the next level is when we have the continuation of something like we saw last January with the the Reddit silver crowd, the Wall Street silver crowd, and I think that's it's bound to happen again, and I think that's going to attract a lot more young investors to the space soon.
So the investor case for silver is that it's sort of a poor man's gold, maybe more easily accessible to a lot of people, especially if they're younger, trying to save. Economic Ninja had the story the other day in his talk about the person that worked at McDonald's and every 2 weeks would buy 1 or 2 ounces of silver in his paycheck. So definitely silver can be more accessible to people. And we definitely say, go for the precious metals. One other way to do it, of course, is look at the mining stocks. So talk about the value that mining stock can provide an investor, especially who's just getting into the space, but looking for some returns. Maybe they've sold the real estate, their stock, a little long in the tooth there, and they're looking for another investment.
Well, that's actually something I was contemplating today. I was thinking about that. You go back in history and, depending on how and when you buy silver, if you bought it, at the top of the last cycle, $50 an ounce, you'd be underwater today, even though silver's had an excellent run from about $13, $14 when I started Vizsla. So, at the same time, Vizsla has gone from 15 cents to almost $3. So that the price per ounce has doubled, let's say roughly over that period of time, but the share price has gone up 20 times. And that's the kind of leverage and the response that you can get from the equities. And you can get that basically in a lot of cases in varying different price environments. Now, I advocate buying both the metal and the shares, and I certainly advocate buying the safer, more established producers like First Majestic or Pan American or something like that. But there should be a certain portion of a silver investor's portfolio, or any investor's portfolio really, that has to do with the more speculative exploration development stocks like Vizsla.
Yeah. So Vizsla's exploration, you guys have a really good resource, lots of drill results. We've definitely been following you for quite some time. I have been on shows where I've been asked, up-and-coming silver companies have talked about you guys. Talk about your sort of going from unknown to sort of the darling of the industry in terms of a silver exploration company, how that all came about, a little bit about your project and what you've seen, and the type of resource that you have that's got people so excited.
Well, first of all, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of hard work to you get to the point where we're a bit better known than we were before. But what we did essentially was consolidate an entire silver camp in Mexico. It's something that you don't see that happening very often at all, really. And to take a project from the hands of a private group that the only reason they sold it to us essentially was because of the depressed silver prices, $13 an ounce. There was a death in one of the families that kind of created this catalyst for them to even consider selling. Right now at $20 to $25 silver, they'd be making an absolute killing at their operations there. Extremely profitable, extremely high grade mine. But because of timing and a bit of persistence on our side, we were able to close that deal we own this district now, and we've made some extremely high-grade discoveries there now that are turning into a very large resource at Napoleon. So why I'm so proud about the company and what excites me about it so much is that we did really take something from the unknown into the known, and I think that's part of the reason why we've been able to capture some imagination, some excitement from the market, because it's it's one of those things that only comes around every decade or two.
Tell us what stage of the Lassonde curve you're in, exploration, developer, producer. How would you classify your?
Well, it's funny because we have a different approach to the Lassonde curve in a sense, because we actually bought out the Valley of Despair in a sense, because although we are exploring, we bought this district that included a 500 ton per day operating mill. So we, in the typical Lassonde curve, excitement, development, the share price or interest peaks, and then it falls off as they go through permitting. So we have a permitted operating mill there. We don't have that same type of Valley of Despair, as they call it, in that Lassonde curve. So we're doing such high impact exploration. We have 10 rigs turning, 100,000 meter drill program, one of the most aggressive exploration programs of all of Mexico. And as we're successful, we can move so rapidly into production. We don't have to wait, for 5 years or 10 years to permit and build the mine. The milling operation's already there.
So you have the mill. Are you producing now, or are you waiting to outline your resource?
We're waiting. We're taking the right steps in order to outline the resource, put together economics, and build a proper mine plan. But we are very rapidly growing that resource.
Is the next step a feasibility study or economic analysis, or investors look for these things, look for the drill results, and they're like, okay, have your resource, tell me, is it a good investment? We think it is by the grade. Usually the grades that you have are going to be really good, but they look for those, those reports of 43 1-to-1s.
Yeah.
When would you guys think in your timeline you would have something like that for the investors?
So our initial resource will be Q1 of 2022. It'll be by the end of the year, and the end of the first quarter, I should say, of 2022.
Okay.
And then from there, we expect subsequent growth in resource updates. And in the background, what we'll be doing is doing the baseline environmental study work, the baseline engineering work, so that we'd be ready to publish a PEA very rapidly on the back of a couple of, let's say, multiple resource expansions from Napoleon and Tajitos and possibly other discoveries.
You mentioned permitting. Do you have all your permits, or do you have like a series of permits that you need to go ahead and get while you're working on your financial analysis? So
we have, we're fully permitted for all the exploration work that we're doing. We do have community agreements that are, for exploitation as well.
Okay.
But where we would need to permit would be for underground development at most likely the Napoleon and the Tajitos area, which are new areas without underground operations on them already.
So you mentioned some of the names and areas you're drilling. Can you give us like the 10,000 foot view of what area you're drilling in, so people know kind of where you are?
Yeah. So if you think about basically to orientate yourself here, if you think about the west coast of Mexico, there's a city called Mazatlan there. Mazatlan is a beautiful in normal times, a place where a lot of Canadians and Americans go. And
snowbirds.
And snowbirds, exactly.
Yeah.
And if you were to fly there, you would drive about 45 minutes from that Mazatlan airport up a 4-lane toll highway that's a beautiful highway, or a 2-lane highway that's also in good shape. And you would get to the western portion of our district. The highway itself actually drives over the Napoleon and essentially the Tajitos area as well too. And so that's the main focus, is the western portion of the district. But the district stretches for 14 kilometers from west to east. And we have countless other vein corridors that run through the property there. But our focus right now when we talk about the resource is on the western portion of the district. And if you think about these vein corridors, they're corridors that run 5 to 7 kilometers north-south. Very, very big, very wide, very high grade. And we've only really scratched the surface here with our drilling. We've only drilled about 5% of the overall veins that we have in the district. So
lots of upside potential on known potential targets, just got to do additional work on those.
Exactly, yeah, it's all about doing the work. So the hardest part was, really consolidating the district, making that first discovery. Now that we're on that discovery, we understand a lot more about the district, and we're continuing to attack it with our aggressive exploration program.
So talk about historic production just in the general area around you. Have there been other mines in that area as well?
Yeah, we suspect that there's been quite significant mining from the Animas vein corridor. And the Animas vein corridor is, if you think about where our resources in the western portion, it's in the central area of the district, and it's one of these 5 kilometer long vein corridors. There's been 7 major developments along that vein corridor, and we suspect about 100 million ounces of silver equivalent have been taken out of those mines. And now that's not the only production there. There's quite a few other operations, small-scale operations historically in the area. And of course, that's why that mill was built there that we have now, the El Coco mill, to process this ore. Okay. So it's been a prolific producer for 450 years, since the mid-1500s. It was actually discovered by Francisco de Ibarra, who was a Spanish conquistador.
Of course, yeah.
And he
weren't most of the ones in Mexico discovered that way?
Fresnillo and Durango were as well, and this was the last one he discovered, and he actually died in Panuco.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so it's got a lot of history.
Well, thankful to him for doing all the exploration work. So now you guys
exactly.
are on resource.
Yeah.
So, people looking to invest in silver in Mexico, different companies are there, obviously, lots of them exploring. Some of them have pretty good assets, some in early stages. Why should people consider Vizsla? What is your value proposition?
Well, for me, the reason that we're investors, we're shareholders. I was the founding shareholder of the company, and the reason why we love it so much and we continue to buy shares of the company is there's nothing else really like it out there, in the sense that we can move so rapidly into production. But before we do that, we're going to maximize the value with exploration. And we've seen cases of this happen before with Silvercrest and Meg Silver and other Mexican companies, of course, that have had that high-grade resource and results, and the market rewards it for them. Yeah. So, I suspect that we're going to progress rapidly into production. But on the way to do that, we're going to maximize value through exploration.
Silvercrest is a good name to use. I was down doing a mine tour of them back in 2018. I wrote about them when they were about $1.40 or so for Seeking Alpha, and I think brought it to the generalist public, which at that time I don't think was aware of Silvercrest, but they hit that Babicanora vein and got those bonanza grades. And then it's just literally exploded since then. I love that area. I love that story. You guys are kind of following along in their path, which is good news because we're going to need more silver. Last question I want to ask you was, why silver for you? Why is silver important for you? Why a silver exploration company?
Well, it was the first metal that I ever bought. My dad, basically kind of, I was very young. I was, I think, 11 years old or something like that, and I guess it's called illegal child labor, but I was working at a horse stable, shoveling stalls and things like that, and I'd save up a few bucks. It's called
initiative.
Initiative, I guess so. Yeah, they didn't have that word back then. But my dad, he said, if you want to save it and make some money, you should buy silver coins with this, and so I did, and I ended up, that grew, and I kept doing that, and was rewarding for me financially as a young. So I was always really quite interested in that, and the reason for me that I like silver is obviously that history personally, but also that it's a technology metal, and it's a monetary metal, and they're talking about. I just read a headline that the government's going to run out of money. U.S. government's going to run out of money by October 18th, right? Sure. They just said.
Not a problem.
So they're going to borrow more, and that money's going to try to invest that money in green infrastructure. And so if you do that, you've got the inflation impacts.
You've exploded the demand for silver.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're in the best place possible here. We're finding tons of it down at our project.
All signs pointing up at this point.
Yeah.
Industrial demand, monetary demand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shortages. We have shortages right now going on silver. So there's a Silver Institute, and the Metals Focus does the research for them, said that for the first time in history this year, they expect us to use 1 billion ounces of silver, but we're not producing 1 billion ounces of silver.
No.
Short-term supply issues. Good that you guys have a near-term project, something you can ramp up fairly quickly to kind of alleviate that, because a lot of people we're talking to here, really good projects, it's going to be 3 to 4 to 5 years. So where's that silver going to come from?
Well, exactly, and I think if we really understood how tight the supply-demand fundamentals of silver were, I think there'd be millions of people rushing in to buy it,
so.
But and that'll happen. It'll just take a bit of time, but it'll happen.
Well, awesome. Great to have you here at the conference. Good to meet you.
Yeah,
I know we've spoken over Zoom many times, but good to see you in person.
Appreciate that, yeah.
And congratulations on your success. Very happy that you're a Millennial CEO. Maybe that's a good example for the Millennials to get into the space, to see you doing that. Congratulations on all your success. We followed you for a number of years, talked about you quite a bit. Glad to see it, happy to see it in the silver space.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thank you.
All right.